What's up? It's the Coaster Craze, and this is a very exciting video for me to do. This is the first in a three-part series on the evolution of Bolliger and Mabillard, or B&M, a very popular roller coaster manufacturer and designer firm that has gone, in my opinion, from 1990 when there were these big industry innovators to today's world where I think they're lagging a little bit behind. So we're going to discuss the full history of B&M in three parts: the 90s, 2000s, and 2010s and beyond. So today is the first part, 1990s. And to help out, I'm going to be calling up my great friend Blake, who's a fellow coaster enthusiast, and the idea for this video actually came up from a discussion we had during lunch at school when, school was still a thing, in person. And so it's only fitting for him to come on and give some great points and have a discussion about it. So let's call him up.
Coaster Craze, and this is a pretty big video today, but it's a thank you for helping me reach 400.
Hey, Shane? You want me to be in your next B&M video? Okay, I'll be right there.
So, Walter Bolliger and Claude Mabillard were two Swiss designers and manufacturers who worked for the Swiss manufacturing firm Giovanola that was often subcontracted by Intamin, which is another Swiss roller coaster designer, throughout the 70s and the 80s, and they worked on the manufacturing side for many Intamin creations. And then B&M, Bolliger and Mabillard, they started actually designing a couple of the Intamin coasters, or helped design, including Shockwave at Six Flags Magic Mountain in 1986, which was Intamin's first ever stand-up coaster. So, you can see the trend there, where, that's going to lead to some of B&M's first rides. And then they also designed Flashback, which was the failed Z-Force coaster, and a few others. But then in 87, they split from Giovanola. That was a pretty good choice, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. Giovanola, all you got is Goliath, Titan, and Anaconda, so...
Yeah, not the best, but you can tell by the two companies' track design that they were very closely interconnected. But then, so they split in 87, and after working on Six Flags Great America's Rolling Thunder, which was a relocated Intamin bobsled coaster from Six Flags Great Adventure, they developed a relationship with the head engineer, Robert Mamp, there. So then Robert Mamp actually asked B&M if they could design a stand-up coaster for the 1990 season, and B&M accepted, thankfully, and they made Iron Wolf, which was the first ever Bolliger and Mabillard roller coaster. So that was the big start, 1990, and we're gonna first wrap through the first 10 years of the company, and it's insane, the growth from 1990 to 1999. So you got Iron Wolf, which is now Firebird at Six Flags America, after originally being Apocalypse. Now it's a floorless conversion. So 92 was the first big advancement, right? 1990, they're just a little upstart company you maybe keep a watch on. 1992, they make Batman the Ride, also for Six Flags Great America. First ever inverted coaster in the world. And for a company just in their third year of making coasters to come out with a completely new ride type, especially one that's amazing, that's pretty unheard of.
Were SLCs around back then?
Nope. This was the first ever inverted coaster. SLCs, I believe, started in 1995. So, it's become an American coaster landmark. It has that, official plaque on it, and it's only from 1992, so that's pretty cool. And so then, by then, they won 1993, they designed Kumba at Busch Gardens, Tampa Bay, which was their first sit-down looper. And I know you want to talk about this a bit, right?
Yeah, because Kumba, that was just a huge step up, because because the coaster community, they were having stuff like Viper and all these Aero sit-down coasters, and they went straight to Kumba. Kumba is fantastic, and I've heard some better things about Viper throughout the years, but I think everyone can agree that Kumba is the superior ride. So that's just revolutionary, including the 4 across thing.
Oh yeah, because all these other manufacturers are in 2 cross seating. B&M comes and is let's do 4 across. Yeah, maybe it'll increase the price a little bit because you need a bigger track, but it vastly improved capacity. And these things are capacity machines. They're very reliable, which is one of their biggest draws for parks for sure. It's always been a very safe option. And And again, Viper, 1990, those massive aero loopers, that was like the big draw of the coaster community. And then in 3 years, you got Kumba just like crushing all of them completely. I mean, the ride's so much smoother and just better, of course, intensity, inversions. The transitions are way less janky. And I mean, that's pretty sick. So then throughout the 90s, they went improving those 3 models with customs, bigger and better. Then in 98, they came out with their next new model, Oblivion at Alton Towers. First ever dive coaster. Pretty cool again. It's not the best type of coaster. I know coaster enthusiasts aren't huge fans of them, but it is a crowd pleaser. It draws in lots of guests and was a huge deal at the time. Then the next year, 99, was insane for them because they introduced 2 new models to their company, one which is a completely new model in the industry. So their first one was an update of other companies' hypercoasters with the debut of Apollo's Chariot and Raging Bull, which
and
again...
Apollo's Chariot still holds up phenomenally.
Oh yeah, completely. And I've heard great things about Raging Bull as well. Like, you look at some of the other hypers from that period, like 95, 94 I think was like the big one, and some of these other aero loopers don't hold a candle to the 1999 B&M hypers and any subsequent B&M hypers. So I mean, it's just insane how during the 90s, those 3 models of stand-up, sit-down looper, and hyper just completely destroyed all the competitors and really forced them to go into this coaster war, which we'll of course be talking about later in like 2000s and like early 2000s, late 90s. They got all the companies and parks fighting for the biggest and best coasters. And then finally, in 1999, they also came out with a completely new model, the floorless coaster with Bizarro at Great Adventure, which, I mean, what do you think? I think it's still an amazing ride.
I still think Bizarro is good. I mean, I have a little trouble with the pacing a little bit. I just don't think it's as tense. I prefer Batman the Ride, but I feel like floorless coasters are just a strong model. But the thing with B&M, when they tried to innovate and make excuses so parks would buy more than one of their rides, which I don't think was really a case with a lot of other companies. They would build one ride per company.
For sure, yeah.
One ride per park, and then they move on. But B&M was like, okay, let's change up the trains so the ride experience is different. And I think that kind of was their type of innovation. Instead of making more like different types of elements, they would do the different types of trains. And I think that's what made B&M big and so marketable, that they could do like 5 models at a park.
Yeah, I mean, the versatility is pretty insane. Like, yeah, Aero definitely had a bit of that too, and so did Intamin. But most other manufacturers, I mean, 2 GCIs at the same park. Like, yeah, I know Hershey Park has that, but like, that's not the best idea.
3, but...
Yeah, technically 3. Like, you know, those manufacturers that are great, but they fill like a specific niche. B&M, yeah, they have a looping coaster niche, and maybe you could say that they weren't as expansive as, let's say, like Intamin or Aero, and just like the difference. I mean, like Aero made like X2 versus like Iron Dragon, for example, but B&M found a way to make all these different types of coasters just because they had different trains. While the layouts, I mean, besides the hypers, they were pretty similar to each other, right?
I mean, Great Adventure, for example, they have so many B&Ms. They have like 3 vertical loops on B&Ms there.
Then they also have Superman the Flyer and Nitro, yeah.
That's just insane that one park can have 5 one company.
Yeah, the versatility is definitely just insane. All the different seating configurations they were coming up with really just like expanded the brand and the industry overall. So end of the 90s, you got 3 massive updates to previous types of coasters and 3 new coasters types, with the floorless being the final one, and dive and invert being the others. So yeah, I mean, they're sweeping the industry, and that brings us right into the big coaster wars of the turn of the millennium that I would say B&M really sparked, wouldn't you? I mean, like all these other manufacturers, think about aerodynamics. What were the type of like loopers they started the 90s with? Viper, Anaconda, and then they ended with what Alan Schilke. Vortex was what, late 80s.
Okay.
And then, but yeah, it's like, I mean, same thing. It's like those were the ones that were coming out at the time that B&M like came into the industry. And then after maybe like 7 years of B&M being in the industry, you got Alan Schilke coming on to help Aero with what, Tennessee Tornado, which I mean, that is such a better ride than those old Aero loopers. And then, of course, X2, which comes in 2002. But again, B&M forces competition from the other manufacturers. And I mean, we as enthusiasts really have to thank them for just improving the industry so much. But I mean, come on, like the 1990s, by 1999, I think it's very analogous to say B&M was like RMC in 2020, right?
Yeah, a lot of enthusiasts, we kind of complain about B&M, that they're kind of the same thing over and over again, but the industry would not be what it is today without B&M.
Not
and
at
just
all.
Imagine all these parks, imagine no B&Ms at any parks, like the Coaster Can of the world. I mean, B&M's made like 120 rides, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, they're the manufacturer I've ridden the most coasters from personally, and this is something we'll talk about in a bit when we're talking about like kind of the decline, you could say. But every major park kind of needs a B&M, besides like maybe the Disney parks, and well, soon every major park will kind of have one. But besides the point, it just shows that like I mean, think about RMC now. They have what 10 years under their belt. And they're the manufacturer. I think that's how we can think of B&M by the year 1999. I mean, come on, Apollo's Chariot, that's insane.